Hi, I'm Micah, and I have 76 days to lose 37.5 pounds. It's September 15th, and I weighed in at 239.8 pounds. I had a good day today. This morning I had skirt steak for breakfast, then I went for an hour-long walk in the park, and then tonight I had grass-fed ground beef, and I put kind of some of that aioli, fake aioli sauce like I made the other night. I mixed that with it. It was pretty good. I wasn't too hungry though, so I didn't eat a lot for supper. And then after supper, I went for another hour long walk in the park. Didn't get any footage of that today, but that's okay. One thing that happened this last week is I came across an article. It said, common weight loss diet may come with a serious downside, long term study finds, with this picture of what looks like a healthy salad. So I kind of knew when I saw it that this was probably clickbaity because they put a healthy image to make you think, oh, everybody knows salads are good, so is this dangerous? But no, they're not talking about a diet with salads. What they're talking about is low carb diets. So the article's proposition is that, yeah, these low carb diets might help you lose weight in the short term, but long term, they might be harmful. So they say sticking to a low carb meal plan can help some with diabetes manage their weight and blood sugar levels. But a new study from Australia questions the long-term effectiveness and safety of this approach for those without diabetes. So they're kind of carving out this little group of, if you have diabetes, it might be okay, because they can't deny how effective it is for people with diabetes. But then they're saying nobody else should get on it. It might be dangerous. So it's very it's like a scare tactic, and you see it in a lot of headlines, and it seems to only go one way. You don't see a lot of headlines saying vegan diets are bad, but you see a ton of headlines about how bad low carb or anything with meat. You always hear about these being, might be risky. So then skipping down, basically it's a food questionnaire that was given out in 1990 to 94, and then they asked them another food questionnaire between 95 and 98, and then they sent out another food questionnaire 2003 to 2007. They basically just asked people to recall what kind of food they ate, which is not, like right at the outset, that's a horrible data set because people are not good at recalling what they eat, especially if you're eating unhealthily. Like, I know for me, I would forget that I already had cookies earlier in the day. And because what happens is, as soon as that craving comes, you just want it again and you don't even think about what you already had. And so at the end of the day, if I had been asked, well, what did I have today? I might remember the last snack that I had, but forget the earlier ones. And people are horrible, even if they remember what they had, at reporting amounts because we don't pay attention to what we eat. So right off the bat, just the data for this is horrible, and it's not a scientifically controlled experiment in any way. It's just looking at bad data and then trying to correlate it to outcomes later. There's no rigorous scientific findings that you can make from that. You can't make a conclusion. It's just not powered to do that. So all you can do is make a hypothesis and say, hey, maybe this is why, or maybe this is good, or maybe this is bad. But that maybe is the same as saying maybe not. We don't know is what you're saying. We don't know. So then when I looked at it, and this is what really got me. So what they're calling a high carb and low carb, they basically looked at these people that reported what they ate, and they said, well, let's shift them into different groups, and let's take the 20% of people that had the highest carbs, and let's take the 20% of people who had the lowest carbs. And so we'll have a low carb and a high carb group, and we'll compare their outcomes. What was that 20% of people that had the lowest carbohydrate intake? And so they tell you. The way they scored it was the lower the carbohydrate intake you had, the higher score you got. So when they say the top 20%, they're meaning they have the highest score at having low carbohydrates. So they're saying the 20% with the lowest carbohydrates. And they say they got about 38% of energy from their carbohydrates. So if you do the math on that, so let me do it at 2,500. What they might say, a man might eat 2,500 calories a day. So let's do 2,500 times 0.38. That's 950 calories. So let's divide it by 4 calories per gram. And that's 237.5 grams for a man. That's a lot of carbs. That's not low at all. So what they're essentially looking at are people who are eating like a standard American diet is the low carb group. And then the high carb, that's a low fat group is what that is, as opposed to just kind of the standard, which is high carb, high fat. So basically they said, hey, this high carb group had somewhat better outcomes than this average carb group, which is basically what most people eat. And then they're reporting that as if this group was low carbs. Well, it's the lower carb group in the study, but it's not low carbohydrate at all. The definitions I've heard for low carbohydrate would be under 100 grams of carbohydrate per day is maybe low. And then under 50 grams is probably, more considered low carb. And then ketogenic would be under 20. And then carnivore is like as close to 0 as you can get. So it's super dishonest to say that this study reports on low carbohydrate diets. It just doesn't at all. It's just a bad study. From the data they collect to the labels they use for these groups, it gets reported by some reporter that's just giving you kind of bare details, and it's just like a way to frame it. What this study means is people who cut out all fat do better than people who have mixed fat and carb diets. But that doesn't say anything about people who cut out all carbs or get really low on their carbs and have a mainly fat diet or higher fat. It frustrates me because it just happens over and over and over. And this article popped up and there were about 5 or 6 more headlines. So it gets picked up by every major media outlet. A new study shows that low carbohydrate diets are unhealthy in the long term. We're going to let you get on it if you're diabetic, but really it could still kill you. And the funny thing is, in the article itself, they say that it can help some with diabetes manage their weight and blood sugar levels. Their weight and blood sugar levels. And then you get later into this article and say it may result in weight gain long term and possibly increase the risk of developing metabolic disease. So they're saying, short term, it can heal your diabetes and lower your weight. Long term, it makes you put on weight and makes you get diabetes. It just makes no logical sense. And they're just extrapolating based on a really bad study that actually isn't even talking about a low carbohydrate diet at all. So I don't know. It seems dishonest, but I think it's probably more likely just someone who's writing these articles actually doesn't have a scientific foundation or hasn't researched really. They just basically pick and choose the conclusions that they think make sense to them based on what they've already read in other articles, and they just report it as fact without actually maybe even understanding what they're reporting on. That's my guess as to what's happening. Anyway, I just wanted to share that because you should really try to figure out what's behind a lot of these articles and actually look at what kind of study it was, how they're labeling things and if the labels themselves make sense. Because this article is grabbing the labels from the study that called this low carbohydrate, but without any critical review of what that label meant in the study. In the study, it actually meant an average carbohydrate intake, like what you would eat, probably what the majority of people eat. So that's it for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll make another video tomorrow.